Our subject today is the ethics of solidarity, dilemmas of patriotism, membership, and collective responsibility. What do we owe one another? And do we owe more, or do we owe special obligations to those with whom we share a history? Take the Olympics to begin with a simple example. Whom do you root for? Most people root for citizens of their own country to win. Is there anything wrong with that? Is it a kind of irrational prejudice, or is it a legitimate expression of the kind of patriotic sentiment that Rousseau is talking about? Raise your hand if you think that ideally we should overcome this tendency to root for our own in the Olympics. Raise your hand if you're either uneasy doing it or if you forswear it, think it's actually a bad habit. Anyone here at Harvard who holds that view? A handful of people, not many, 4 or 5. And what about in New Delhi, Tokyo, Shanghai, and Sao Paulo? Raise your hand if you think this tendency to root for our own to win in Olympic Games or in cricket matches or in soccer games is something that ideally we should overcome. In New Delhi, I see about 3 hands. Anyone in Shanghai feel that way? What about in Tokyo? In Sao Paulo, I see 1 hand. All right, let's hear first in New Delhi.
Good evening, Professor Sandel. My name is Rishika. I think principally that we should refrain from rooting for people only because they happen to belong to our own country or our own community, because of the kind of repercussions that leads to. Like, principally speaking, if you're only rooting for somebody, you're obviously at the same time going against somebody else. And I think we should believe in a common humanity. And in today's world, we do believe in common humanity, in human beings. And therefore, principally, we should not root for somebody just because they happen to belong to our community.
Who has a reply? Who disagrees with Rishika and can speak in defense of rooting for the home team?
It is fair to say that you feel a special attachment to people that are within your national community rather than the global community.
And so when you're watching the Olympics, Peter, whom do you root for? In the swimming event, Michael Phelps.
Michael Phelps.
You say that it's legitimate. It's not just a kind of indulgence that you slide into.
Yes.
It's legitimate because, there's a special tie between you as an American and a great American swimmer?
Yes.
All right, let's go to Sao Paulo in the front row.
Hello, my name is Rafael. I think one thing, like rooting for your country, does not undermine the faith in humanity or rooting for humanity in other ways than rooting for your country in the Olympics. I find it's natural for people to root for people that are that have somehow identity to you, and you're more identified to people in your country or in your town or in your community. So I don't think one thing undermines the other.
Let's sharpen the issue by introducing a competing moral claim. Rooting for Michael Phelps to win the swimming competition may seem innocent enough. Now let's suppose that you are a member of your country's Olympic team, and you discover that another member of your team has been cheating by taking drugs. And you have a choice to make. Should you report your teammate and lessen your country's chances of winning a gold medal, or should you not? should you keep quiet?
Hi, Professor. I'm Arjun here. I would specifically trump the fact that he's with me over the fact that he's doing something wrong, because we are part of a team, so the togetherness of the bond there would supersede whatever he's doing. He's part of my team and he's representing the same country, and the bond that we have would supersede the fact that he's cheating.
Arjun's point about a moral bond being able to override telling the truth about cheating seems to have some resonance with views that most of you here at Harvard expressed when it came to reporting a friend whom you knew had cheated on a test. So, how would you reply? Why would you turn your teammate in?
My name is Barry. If you're cheating, then that defeats the whole purpose of it, of like you're training and you're going there to work hard and to have that fair competition. So that sort of undermines the whole point of the competition.
So the principle of a fair competition, fairness, is violated by cheating. But does that mean, Barry, that you think the principle of fairness should always trump or override the moral bond that Arjun is describing?
So I would say it's not so much fairness as much as what the point of the event is and how the outcomes can play out. So for instance, for cheating on an ECTMP set, I said that I would not turn my friend in.
You would not turn your friend in if you caught them cheating on an economics problem set.
Yeah, because although it would be wrong, the outcomes, so for instance, if he gets 100% on that, it's not going to hurt anyone else from getting just as high of a grade on that if they worked really hard. Whereas in the case of the Olympics, if someone's cheating and get first place, it eliminates the possibility for those who worked hard to get first place. And so that's where I would draw the distinction, is sort of how the outcomes play out, and therefore how serious the moral injustice is compared to me betraying.
So the moral weight of the wrong, whether it's cheating on a test or cheating in the Olympics, the moral weight of whether the bond, the moral tie, should be overridden or not.
Yeah, I would say so.
All right. Anyone else have a view?
My name is Max. I agree that we each have a special relationship and a bond with our other teammates and to the team as a whole. But I think because of that bond, we have a responsibility and a duty to preserve the moral integrity of the team. And I think by not reporting your teammate, you would be detracting from the value if you win, and from the solidarity and integrity of the team.
And what about the moral bond, the moral tie that Arjun refers to?
You have a moral bond to your teammate, for instance, but you have a more important and a stronger moral bond to your country as a whole and to your team as a whole. And because of that, I think you have a responsibility to basically sell it this one person so that the team as a whole isn't tainted by their cheating and the country as a whole isn't tainted by their cheating.
So Max, you've actually offered a different reason
Yeah.
for turning in the teammate. One reason would be to preserve the fairness, but this is an independent moral argument, if I understand you
Yes.
correctly. And it's an independent moral argument because you're saying it's actually an act of patriotism, paradoxically enough, to turn in your fellow countrymen.
Yes, I would say that's what I'm saying.
Even if it lessens the chance of your country getting a gold medal.
Even if it does that.
Does that mean that you would be, if you found someone cheating on a test, would you be more likely to turn them in if that person were your brother or sister than a stranger?
No, I would be less likely. It's a different bond. I just couldn't turn in my sister. But maybe it would be better to. But I still wouldn't.
Fair enough. All right, that's very interesting. So now there are two different possible justifications. Who would like to respond to this question in Shanghai or Sao Paulo or Tokyo?
I think this poses like a question also of what we as society take for important. For instance, giving him the possibility to do the right thing. And I know that by giving him this opportunity, I will be doing a good thing also, that is trusting in his decision to make the right decision.
The examples we've considered assume that obligations of solidarity point inward, that they give us special responsibilities to fellow citizens or to members of our own community or family in the case of Max's sister. But sometimes it could be that obligations bound up with our life story, our history, our community, our identity, sometimes those obligations may point outward, not just inward. And I'd like to consider now an example of that kind by posing the following question. Is it ever the case that this generation, members of this generation, have a moral responsibility to redress the sins or the injustices of their grandparents or great-grandparents' generation? Let's begin with those who question the idea of collective responsibility. On what grounds do you reject it?
Hi, Professor. My name is Isabel. And while I think there is a moral question here, I think we should think about our main objective. Like, where do we want to go with this? Because if we keep making the point that there has been injustice in the past and that the future generations are always responsible, then when's it going to end? Like, 1,000 years from now, we're still going to make the same argument. So there's never going to be playing equality. We're always going to assume that we are unequal, and therefore we have a responsibility, and therefore we have to repay, and we're never going to think of everyone as equal.
Isabel in Sao Paulo says, when is it going to end? Does moral responsibility extend indefinitely across generations? Who else would like to address this question?
I'm Satoru. I think that the current generation is not responsible for the wrongdoing of our grandparents because we were not born and we didn't have any power to influence their decisions.
Hi, I'm Kiana, and I think that in the case, like, if the current generation benefits from the wrongdoings that their past generations did, then they're responsible. Like with the case of white settlers in Australia who maybe took the land of Aborigines, or with white Americans in America who they enslaved African Americans. If you benefit, if you made your family financially stable, and that kind of like recurred over generations, and the present day citizens are still benefiting off of that, then they have a responsibility.
Regardless of whether we benefit from it or we don't benefit from it, it does not influence whether we are not responsible for it, because we don't have any control for that past judgments made by our ancestors. And plus, the current generation and the past generation have different values, so that we cannot judge their wrongdoings based on value that the current generation has.
I think it's like what John Locke was saying. If you can automatically consent to being governed if you're enjoying the benefits of the government. And I think that it can, like, similarly, it applies with this situation. If you are enjoying / benefiting from like the injustices that your ancestors made, then I think that you're automatically consenting to like have ownership of those injustices.
By way of implicit consent, even though you didn't control the policy in the first place.
I think so.
Soturu?
I don't want to be made responsible for the past wrongdoings of my ancestors, and because I have my own values of justice and rightness. So and I don't denounce my ancestors for acting based on their own values or values of justice. So we're basically principally separated.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone who would like to address this disagreement between Kiana and Soturu in New Delhi?
I am Ashani. If I would steal somebody's car and then sell it, and I've derived the money from it, then I would be entitled, if caught, to pay them back the money and compensate them. In the same way, reparations would work even if I am not the person who who did the wrongdoings that happened to the Aboriginals, for example, but I would still be, because I got that benefit, I would have to give them some kind of compensation and reparation.
Suppose there were no benefit. Would you say, I therefore have no responsibility to address that wrong that my country did?
In a way, the fact that you are a citizen of America in itself leads to believe that there was some kind of harm propagated by your country, and therefore that can be attributed to you.
We've begun, and only begun, to explore the hard moral questions, and actually quite deep philosophical questions, posed by present-day debates about whether collective responsibility reaches across time. And to go back to the question with which we began, the ethics of solidarity, we find that to decide the question about whether there are obligations of solidarity, we have to ask not only do we have special responsibilities for members of our community, we have also to ask whether our membership may implicate us in a history that carries moral burdens that are for us to discharge. It may no longer be the case, as it was in the 18th century, that a tragedy that befalls people, as Rousseau said, in Tartary or Japan, can't excite the interest or the commiseration or the concern or the fellow feeling of people who live at a great distance. In a way, these global classroom sessions have called into question our familiar ways of thinking about distance and presence, which may complicate, not resolve, long-standing questions about the ethics of solidarity and membership and the question of what it is we owe one another as citizens and as fellow human beings. I want to thank our participants in New Delhi, Shanghai, Tokyo, and Sao Paulo, and I want to thank all of you for joining in what I think has been a remarkable experiment in global civic discourse. Thank you very much.